Brendan Dassey trial transcript day 6, continuing on page 87. Attorney Kratz, cross-examination of Kris Schoenenberger-Gross, school psychologist, Michigan High School. And within his IQ tests, and understanding IQ is kind of a broad range, but there are also abilities that psychologists and in fact you have to assess where Brendan may have some strengths and where he may have some weaknesses, at least cognitively, or his ability to understand or to think or to achieve. Isn't that true? Yes. Are you familiar with the Woodcock-Johnson test? Yes. Could you just briefly tell the jury what that is, please? Woodcock-Johnson, third edition, has tests of cognitive abilities and achievements. The cognitive test looks at measure of intelligence, looking at his overall intellectual ability. All right, and some of those areas that you look at, some of those sub-areas that we talked about included his verbal abilities. Isn't that right? Yes. And his ability to think, that is what's called the thinking scores or the thinking range. Isn't that true? Yes. Now, are there norms? In other words, are there numbers or averages that when a test like that is scored, they're put into? Yes. Now, the Woodcock-Johnson test, could you tell us what the average score is, or if there's a range of being average? The average range would be approximately 90 to 109. All right, and now one of the things you tested Brendan for was something called the thinking. That is the ability to problem solve or to process information. Isn't that true? Yes. And are you familiar, Miss Schoenenberger-Gross, with what Brendan's scores were on his thinking ability? That is his ability to process information or to problem solve? Yes. And what is that score? A 93. 93? 93. That place Brendan in the average range of his thinking ability? Yes. Other things that you test for in students, not just Brendan, but in other students, are their ability to achieve academically. That is how well they're able to, or at least predictive, that is how you can predict they're going to do with, I guess, what we used to call book learning. Isn't that right? Yes. And again, those tests that are performed are broken down into various, especially with academic scores, various disciplines. Academic disciplines like reading or math or reasoning or things like that. Isn't that true? Yes. And did you perform those tests, and are you aware of the results of those tests for Brendan? I did not personally perform an academic achievement test on Brendan, but there was one conducted in 2002, and I am aware of those results. All right. Now, as you mentioned before, Brendan has some deficits, or at least he needed some extra tutoring or help in the area of speech or language or even in reading. Isn't that true? Yes. Are you aware of the results for Brendan, let's say, in the area of math, his math skills and achievement levels? Yes. Can you tell us what that number was, please? In 2002, he scored within the average range. I would need to refer to the report to give the exact number. Are you able to find that quickly? I certainly can. Why don't you look at Exhibit 217 and find that for us, please? His math score was what? Math reasoning was a 102. Math calculation skills 100. Okay, and is that scored on the same basic score? That is anywhere between 90 and 110 is considered average? Correct. Now, what's the difference between math and math reasoning? Math calculation would be where he's required to do some possibly adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, just solving the basic problems that are in the book. Reasoning, he needs to apply the skills he has, which may include some story problems that he would need to figure out how to set up and solve. And it's within that test, that is, when provided with a story problem or when given a set of facts that he has to apply, Brendan actually achieved, if we're going to be technical about it, over and above average. A 102, isn't that true? Average, a 102 would be solid average range. All right. So these results, that is either 93 in processing or problem solving, or the 102 or the 100 results, supported your conclusion that Brendan does not have any cognitive disabilities. Isn't that true? Correct. As a school psychologist, are you also called upon on occasion to assess and to make recommendations about some behavioral problems? Yes. Now, behavioral programming, at least within a school district, and Michigan's no different than other school districts, can include some specialized classes. In fact, can you include segregation of students from what's called the general population? Isn't that true? Correct. Now, was Brendan a behavioral problem at Michigan? No. Did Brendan exhibit any difficulties with acting out at school or or demonstrating an inability to follow direction? No, and direction meaning regarding behavior specifically. I'm talking about behavior. Yes, at this point. If Brendan would have been unable, for whatever reason, an inability to conform or would exhibit a propensity to act out in school, would it be likely that he would have been removed from general classes? Over time, we would try intervention first, but if that is not working, then we would look at other programming options. In fact, those programming options are called ED or possibly emotionally disturbed classes for children. Is that correct? Correct. That wasn't Brendan? No. When you go through all these, what are called IEP, the individual education programs, and for Brendan it was for speech and language. Was Brendan's mother involved in those programming meetings? Yes. And to your knowledge and in reflection of the exhibit 217, did Brendan's mother ever express any particular concerns that she had with Brendan? Let's talk behaviorally first, okay? Behaviorally, can I refer to if it was documented? Yeah, why don't you do that? Okay, did you say 217 in the binder? Okay, are you referring to the last IEP meeting, can I ask, or, and that's the most relevant, in the fall of, okay, 2005. Are there any behavioral notes that, okay, are included? In the IEP, it was indicated that she would like him to continue to maintain an assignment notebook. Okay, so other than mom would like him to keep an assignment notebook, there were no other problems that were noted at home behaviorally. Behaviorally, no, not that I recall. Okay, let's talk about memory just a little bit, because I know that you know one of the notes that Mr. Freeman had you read, it talks a little bit about memory. Isn't that right? Correct. Are you familiar with different kinds of memory? Yes. Are you familiar that there is a difference between something that is called event memory, that is when somebody actually goes through an event and they remember it when they've lived through something, that they remember that differently than, say, when a teacher reads them a story or when they learn something in class? You know, there's a difference in those two kinds of memory? Yes. Now, from an academic standpoint, the memory that you're most concerned about and the memory that Mr. Freeman had you read about is that second kind. That is, the memory that has to do with learning or what he can remember from a classroom setting. Isn't that true? Correct. You didn't test for, and I assume you don't have an opinion, as to Brendan's ability to recall or remember things that he's actually lived through. That's true, isn't it? True. Do you still have Exhibit 224 with you? Yes. Mr. Freeman asked you to read something. I think it was on the second page. He highlighted something for you to read. Do you see that? Yes. I'm going to ask you to read the line just before what Mr. Freeman asked you to read. Could you do that for me, please? He will respond when called on by teacher if he knows the answer. If not, he shrugs his shoulders. So from an educational classroom standpoint, when Brendan was called on in class and he didn't know the answer, that note reflects he just shrugged his shoulders. Isn't that right? Correct. Nothing in that note that says when Brendan didn't know an answer, he just made something up. He just made up false statements. Note doesn't say that, does it? It does not. The final area of questions that I have for you, Ms. Schoenenberger-Gross, comes in the area of suggestibility. Are there some students within the Mishicot School District that you identify, and in fact your staff expresses concern about being overly suggestible? We wouldn't probably use the term suggestible, but we would perhaps use the term easily influenced. And yes, there are. All right, and if there's a student in Mishicot, in the Mishicot School District that you've observed as being easily influenced or easily led, is that something that would be addressed either through programming or discussions with teachers or discussion with parents? Yes, and that's happened before at Mishicot, hasn't it? Yes. Now, last question I have for you is, did the Mishicot School District ever identify that Brendan Dassey was easily influenced or easily led or suggestible, such that you addressed with either a teacher or a parent that particular observation? There's nothing in the records to indicate that that was an area of concern. That's fine. Thank you for coming. Attorney Kratz, that's all I have, Judge. The court, redirect. Attorney Freeman, yes, please. Redirect examination by Attorney Freeman. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 223. Do you recognize that document? Yes. During some of the questions by Mr. Kratz, you were referring to test results. I believe one specifically was the Woodcock-Johnson. Yes, and the court. Excuse me, could you have her identify the document? Attorney Freeman, I'm sorry. What is that document? This is a copy of my report from the testing that I did in October of 2002. And is this where you were testifying to as far as some of the numbers in regards to the for instance, the Woodcock-Johnson? Yes. Okay, and so this would be the actual report where some of the questions came from Mr. Kratz in regards to, for instance, that one test and some other tests in regards to cognitive abilities, correct? Correct. Now, the actual test result of the Woodcock-Johnson general intellectual ability was what score? 78. And is that average, below average, or what? What would you, how would you describe that? That would be a borderline to below average range. Referring to that same exhibit on page 2 under your observations and discussion? Yes. Can you read the second sentence under that, your observations and discussion of assessment results? In the first paragraph? The first paragraph under that subsection, correct. Okay, he guessed on the items that he was not sure about at times. So at times when he didn't know answers, you're saying he guessed at them? Yes. Now the attachment to that, to your report, indicates actual test score results and his percentile ranking, correct? Yes. And under the observations and discussion setting, section of your report, you actually reference, for instance, if you can go down, that second full paragraph, probably 3/4 of the way down, where it indicates Brendan obtained a cognitive efficiency standard score of 73. Yes. Okay, and the percentile ranking is what? 4. What is the significance of that? What does that mean? That means that on that particular area, Brendan scored as well as or better than 4 out of 100 students his age. So if just to make sure I'm clear, 96 people would have scored better than, out of 100, would have scored better than him in regards to the cognitive efficiency test, as well as or better than him. As well as or better? Mm-hmm. And right after that, you comment about his short-term memory abilities. Can you read that line? Brendan's short-term memory abilities are within the well below average to borderline range. Now, you testified on cross that generally Brendan was in mainstream classes at Michigan, correct? Correct. But you would agree that based on, if you need to review the IEPs, his fourth grade reading level, his reading level was at a fourth grade level, or do you recall what level he was listed at reading? Attorney Kratz, I'm going to, Judge, if I may interpose an objection, I'm not sure that this jury needs to consider anything about Brendan's reading level. I didn't hear any testimony about any reading ability. Attorney Freeman, the state that talked about math level, I think I can go, the court, Attorney Freeman, into that. The court, yeah, I'm going to overrule the objection. We've heard a lot and the state put some of it in. Well, I'll overrule the objection and she can answer the question. Attorney Kratz, thank you. Attorney Freeman, and if you need to refresh your recollection, I would need to refer to, I believe, something. It would be the first. Well, let me get the number for you. You should have the exhibit up there. It's a separate exhibit from 217. I believe it's the September 29, 2005 IEP. I believe that is exhibit 218. Yes. Okay, and I believe if you refer again to page I.11, yes. Okay, does it indicate what his reading level was? Brendan is currently reading at the end of fourth grade level. And what grade level was he in at that time? 10th grade. Attorney Freeman, I have nothing else. The court, any recross? Attorney Kratz, that's all I have. Thank you, Judge. The court, you may step down. Thank you. Your next witness, counsel? Attorney Freeman, yes, Judge. We'll call Blaine Dassey. The court, I showed this witness testified with respect to exhibits 217 to 221, 223, and 224. Was there a 222? Defendant's attorney, I would withdraw. Well, I didn't actually offer 222. No, that was another exhibit. The court, all right. Are you offering those at this time? Attorney Freeman, yes, we would offer those exhibits at this time. Any objection? Attorney Kratz, for the reasons they were used, no, Judge. The court, okay, and they're received for that. Come on up here and just remain standing. You're going to be sworn in as a witness. The clerk, please raise your right hand.